welcome to the bench. How you doing, Horus?
Pretty good.
Hell yeah. Doing pretty good. Pretty good. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about footwork, all about footwork. We did have, Misty was unable to make it for this episode, so we have a quick tag in. We're going to be bringing in Coat. But before we get there, I would like to say that this episode is sponsored by Forged Foam. Forged Foam is the oldest weaponsmithy in Belgarth. We offer gear for anyone from beginner to veterans, and even make custom plastidip shields, which I left it in my car. Shit. Forged Foam just made us a custom plastidip shield, which is freaking awesome. I will have it. I will have the shield on next week to show everybody. But Forged Foam is awesome. They're a great team. Highly recommend. You know, if you're looking to get some swords and stuff, Forged Foam is a great place to go.
I would never have survived my Belgarth journey without them. They give me so many swords.
Hell yeah.
You're so good.
Let's talk events. I've got 3 on the calendar coming up.
SKBC next week. Malcolm Ray is also next week. So if you are up north it's in Iowa, right? Or
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think I spelled that right. I was supposed to check my spelling and I forgot to do it.
Definitely spelled wrong.
It's definitely spelled wrong.
There's an A in there. So Malcolm Ray is up north in Iowa, and SKBC will be down in St. Louis or near St. Louis, and I will be there. Channel will be there.
Hell yeah.
Almost all of us will be there. So there'll be a bunch of Amir there too. I'm really excited.
Hell yeah.
And after that, it feels like there was a ton of events, but they all happened. So we kind of missed a bunch of them, sort of.
Yeah.
But Armageddon, June 3rd to 8th, I wish I could go longer. It is so much fun. I think it basically is always the biggest Belgarth event now. And I'll be there Saturday, though, because my stepsister's getting married on Friday. So that'll be fun, too.
Wow. Just Saturday?
Just Saturday.
Bummer.
I mean, I might get there Friday night, but I'll probably be fighting the people who are, like, fighting at 2 o'clock in the morning, because
that's fair.
That's probably when I'll get there.
Hell yeah. We have a new segment called Show Us Your Booty. So if you happen to own bench booty shorts, you can send in a picture of you showing us your booty. Thank you, Mabel. Thank you, Bourbon, who showed us their booty this week. But feel free, just send me a message with a picture of you wearing your bench booties and hunched over, and and then you might be on the bench. Who knows?
This is the best segment we've ever done.
In bad news, literally, if I was gonna do a featured merch slide, and that's that's the cool red weapon underwear that I designed, but I'm sitting on the toilet like maybe 45 minutes ago, and I get an email from the people who do our merch. Bench merch is currently on hold. They said that there's tariff things that are coming up. Obviously, we're all kind of dealing with tariffs right now, but they said that there's going to be some tariff prices because they do a lot of their printing in China. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what the cost is. I don't know, and at the end of the day, I don't do this for income. This is, it's, money doesn't suck, but like, that's not why I do this. I do this for fun. So like, I'm not trying to have anybody get screwed out of anything. So I'm just putting bench merch on hold. The bench booties are exception to this. We're not ordering anymore right now. Like May 1st was the cutoff, so you're gonna have to wait till the next time to order more. But I believe those are made in the U.S., so I don't think there's any. Excuse me. I don't think there's any tariff issues with those.
Sweet.
But without further ado, let's introduce our guests, both recurring guests. Welcome Dalos, welcome Coat. We're here to talk about footwork and feet. Thanks for being back on the bench. Let's talk about our agenda.
We finally got that Bench After Dark podcast going on.
How are Coat and Dalos? Let's talk about stances as a base. Let's talk about the whys and hows of movement. Let's talk about training footwork. And let's talk about adapting footwork to different kits. Sounds good? Sounds good. Durnar1387 says, maybe time to look into a local shop merch runs with limited event delivery. As probably feasible as that seems, I don't have the spoons for it. The current merch company I'm using, it's easy. They basically handle everything. So like, I don't touch anything. It's just that, a little bit of money comes to me and the merch goes out to you and I don't have to deal with it. Bench booties are special because booty shorts are very precious to me and the community has spoken. They want high quality booty shorts. So I'm willing to do that because I don't know why, but I like booty shorts, but having to do all that with the rest of the merch, I just don't have it in me, man. I'm sorry. So let's talk about Coat and Dalos. We're gonna start with Coat. Oop, that's not Coat. That's Coat. Coat, how are you? What's new?
I'm good. Not much new. I've just been kind of relaxing over the winter and taking a breather and ready to get back to fighting.
Heck yeah. Just saw you at Numenor Closer last weekend, right?
Yeah.
Is that your first event this year?
Oh man, I don't actually remember. I think I've been to a couple others.
Were you at
Okay.
Wolfpack? No.
No, I was not at Wolfpack. Something was going on in Wolfpack. I don't remember. I've been to. Was it a Wreck the Halls? That's my only other event this year.
Hey, that's fine, man. You did the circuit last year, so
Yeah.
you needed some time off. I think.
Yeah.
Did you
that's
miss any events last year?
Oh, I'm sure I did, unfortunately, but yeah. I think one of my years I did maybe 15 events or 16 events in a year. I don't know. I track them all on the Bell Wiki, so that's how I'm double checking.
Heck yeah. Let's see if we got any questions for Coat. While we're waiting for questions, I'll ask you a few myself. So, if I remember correctly, you said Sword and Board was your favorite combo last year. Does that still hold true?
Still the case, yes.
Heck yeah. Any foci of branching out different fighting styles or anything? I saw you doing flow at the event last week. Is that a new thing for you?
I pull out flow every once in a while. I'm still learning. It's fun though,
Heck yeah.
and I'll pull a spear out too every once in a while. But I don't. Reds are scary to me. I stay away from the reds.
No red fighting yet, just yet.
No.
Maybe we'll talk you into it. Are we going to see you next week at SKBC?
No, I'll be at Mel though.
Okay, heck yeah, heck yeah. And are we going to see you at Geddon?
I'll definitely be at Geddon.
Definitely.
Yes,
Heck yeah.
for sure.
Awesome. And then our let's see. How's your Mojo Mutt wants to know? How's your shield holding up?
It's so sad.
Oh no.
Last weekend, the first piece broke off. So I was gonna message you and Quickie. I was gonna message you, Quickie, and Briar about how to put it back. So, but other than that, it's great. The paint's good. Everything else is perfect.
He's still blocking well with it. I can offer my experiences there. He's still doing a good job with it. Let's talk to our other guest, Dalos. Dalos, how you been?
Not bad. Been traveling a lot.
Heck yeah.
Just got back from the Dominican Republic and then Portland, so was out of town for a lot of days in a row. But back home now and doing the basketball coaching business. I was going to take the summer off from that, but got talked into doing more. So I love it, so that's fine. But staying busy with that. So,
you mentioned before the show that you have to skip SKBC this year, and this is the first time that's ever happened, right?
Correct. Yeah, I haven't ever missed an SKBC, so I've been to all of them. I'm the only one who's been to all of them. So the streak will come to an end this year, sadly, but it conflicts with the tournament.
Mhm.
And this team is it's a AAU team or a select basketball team, however you want to phrase that. And I'm
Mhm.
new to them,
Mhm.
so missing tournaments with them while I can do it, it was early in the process to do it yet, so I decided to not do that. So
Makes sense. No, I think that's the right call. You know, when you're a
Mhm.
coach for a team, that's your priority. That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to open it up to chat. See if we have any questions from chat. I can ask you a few myself. So you retired essentially from foam fighting, but we get to see you every now and again. How often would you say that you're fighting still?
I probably fight once every few months, maybe. There's a battery of things that I have to undergo to prepare myself to fight.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
uh, I go get some injections. I like double pain medication, and
Wow.
then I can fight. So I'll do it for like Spring War
Mm-hmm.
and um, maybe an event here or there.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what we do.
Okay,
But
that's
but
a
yeah.
lot. That's a lot, man.
Yeah, my doctor thinks it's important that I still fight some. So
Okay.
Mhm.
but we do it, and I still have a lot of fun with it, and I can do it without doing those things. But the after effect during isn't bad, but afterwards is a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
I can imagine. You know, I asked Mikey about this one on one, but you know, I'm getting up there, and so I got to think about the day that I have to put my sword down. Um, how did that go? How did it go? Is it the day that you're like I'm not going to be fighting every week or whatever? How was that? Was it Did it go as you expected it? Was it really hard? Was it easier than you thought?
Um, that was an agreement with myself more than anything,
Mm-hmm.
because until that point, you're you wake up and you're like, okay, how do I push myself to get better today?
Mm-hmm.
Like every day is like that when you're like pushing to be like the best you can be. And like the competition's really only with yourself when
Mm-hmm.
you really get down to it and you want to be great at something. And so my declaration of retirement was just me saying, I'm done with that. And I didn't really completely stop fighting at that point. It was just acknowledgement really to myself. Again, like I'm saying that, okay, now that push is over with. I'm no longer going to be like all the time and
Mm-hmm.
like on all the time trying to figure out how I'm going to stay, at the top of my game all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, it was like, okay, now I can kind of rest and just relax a little bit more. Um, and I think there was some level of comfort in that, but I will
Mm-hmm.
say that you miss it at the same time. So when you decide to do that, make sure you have something else.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that. So basketball coaching was it for me. Like I'd already started down that path and had something else to like take up my competitive drive and spirit and energy. So I would highly encourage anyone who's putting down something that they're so involved in to have another thing to be very involved in and passionate about.
Honestly, that's good advice. That makes a lot of sense. Like driving for Warlord just occupied so much of my thoughts, and I still fight all the time and stuff, and I still try to get better, but there has been a hole in a sense that of like, okay, what do I do now? Like what's the goal that I want to focus on? And there's been some, honestly, like a little bit of depression and some, like, some anxiety around, like, I need something to drive me, and since that's not driving me anymore, so that really resonates with me a lot, to try to find that next thing, to try to just, that thing to look forward to, as far as like, this is what I'm doing today, this is what I'm going for,
Mhm.
this is my goal, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But without further ado, let's talk more. Let's talk more foam fighting. Let's talk about footwork. Um, our first agenda item here is stances as a base. And Dalos, I'm going to let you kick it off, because I think that was your suggestion, was talking about stancing. So I want to hear what you have to say about stances as a base for footwork.
Yeah. I don't want to spend a ton of time on demo. I will say that we had Anatole and I had like a full class on just stance. So that's how
Mhm.
important that we both thought that it was. And the most important thing I think I can tell you is find the stance that you're comfortable in you really want to kind of be shoulder width apart and find that, like, I'll demo just a little bit, but find like this kind of, so you can see this kind of like bouncy point in your knees, where you're kind of up on your, not up on your toes, but up on the balls of your feet a little bit. Okay. And where you're comfortable and you can move and it doesn't hurt your knees at all. Like if there's pain anywhere in your stance, then that's the wrong one. So find where you can comfortably move. You're not like bringing your feet off the ground too much, and you have that bounce so you can comfortably move in any direction, like I said, and start there. And once you find that point, then you want to get back to that point. Anytime you throw a shot and come out of your base stance, you want to get back to that as quickly as possible. And while you're finding that point, right, whatever your combination is, understand where these things go, how they fit in with your stance, right? If it's sword and board, if it's flow, like how do I hold them? Whatever your style is, I'm not going to go deep into that, but make sure that it fits with your stance, fits with your movement, and pay attention to how your stance adjusts when you move, because a lot of the problems that people have and how they die is they immediately get out of their stance as soon as they start to move. They lose it, like oh, I have a good stance, and then they start moving and everything goes right out the window.
Okay. So then how does so your stance is your base, and are you let me just see if I'm understanding this correctly. Your footwork is transitioning you, but you're trying to stay in that stance as you move.
Correct. Right. And your gear stays where it's supposed to stay. I can't like emphasize that enough, because a lot of times what happens is good people will try to kill you in the transition points. So if your shield goes low when you're moving, that's bad. If your shield goes high when you're moving, also bad, right? Your hip gets open, your shoulder gets open, and it's subtle, right? Like you take a step, and as you step, your board drops a little bit, and now I can hit your board side shoulder, and you don't even realize that you're doing it. And tons of people actually have that issue, and they just don't pay attention. So like for myself, I would put my shield like right here, because I know that's where it belongs. And as I move, I know that it's right there and that's where it belongs. And it stays right there. But I have that checkpoint with myself just in case it slips. And you learn that about yourself, and that's part of my base stance, that being in the right place. Yeah.
Makes sense. Coat, what's your take on stancing? And Coat, you're a little taller, and you have some range fighting. So what's your take on stancing, and how do you incorporate that into your footwork?
First, I agree with everything that Dalos said. You want to be comfortable. You want to be, about shoulder width. I like to fight a little bit. It kind of depends where I am. If I'm further out, sometimes I'll bring my feet a little bit closer so I can move farther. And the closer I get to my opponent, sometimes I'll sneak my feet a little bit wider so that I can make smaller steps with more decisions. But yeah, you just want to be comfortable. You want to be somewhere where you can, return to your base and not get tripped up by your own movements.
Makes sense. Okay. Horus, thoughts on stancing?
I think that Dalos laid it out really well. Another thing that I think about, and I guess I don't really think about it as stance, but like when I'm fighting, I think about like it's really hard to block and or generate power when you're not stable. And so whenever I'm moving, I'm always trying to like keep my body in like a position in which I can still do both of those things. And so like, I guess I never really thought about it, but I'm basically always trying to be able to return to my stance and then be able to like switch between like sort of the two stances of like which foot is forward. And like, especially when I'm like two sword fighting, like you can really mess with your opponent's perception of how far you can reach and what you can do by switching your stance, even though it's basically just like a mirrored
Mm-hmm.
version of the same thing. But you also really want to like keep on your feet because, and in that stance, because if you're standing up straight, your blocks are going to have more range. And then on top of that, when you step, if you're in like a strong stance where your feet are pretty like under your shoulders, you're going to be able to take bigger steps. And then if you do take smaller steps, you're still going to give yourself the opportunity to take a big step.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of when I'm fighting, I think about like having like a stick in my spine, and
Mm-hmm.
like I don't really want to like bend too much unless I think that like right at the end, like once I'm on top of them, then I'll bend because they can't actually move away, and I'm not
Mhm.
worried about them just like getting out.
Makes
That's
sense.
sort of how I think about it.
I'm gonna grab a stick real quick. So something I realized in terms of my stancing, like one of the kind of more basic things that we talk about and teach, like common knowledge stuff, is like if you're shield foot forward, that's more of a defensive stance. If you're sword foot forward, that's more of an offensive stance. And what I kind of realized for me is that's not true. That's not accurate. And we teach that a lot of times, but that's not how it is, because for me, very specifically, if I have my sword foot forward, this is a very defensive stance for me, because when I'm engaging and when I'm fighting, I'm taking steps and I'm transitioning. And so where I want to, if I have my sword foot forward, where I'm going to be after I take a step, that's my shield's going to be forward. So this is actually more of a defensive kind of luring stance for me to have that sword forward. And so, especially if I'm single sword, so I'm, inviting opponents to come in, and then I take a step, and now I'm, in more of a defensive position. Same thing with, like, if I have my shield forward. So I'm here, I have my shield forward, my sword's up, and then I'm taking a step. Now my sword's forward. I'm being in more of aggressive, offensive posture. So that's, stancing as a base. You have to keep in mind that if you're doing a shuffle and you're keeping your feet that way, then that's one thing. But when you're actively taking steps, your stance is going to change as a part of that. And so that's something to think through when you're engaging in those fights, is like, okay, not just what is my stance doing right now, but what is my stance going to do as I'm actively transitioning from one moment to the next. So that's something to think about, I think, for stancing as well, is like not just what am I doing now, but where am I going to end up, if that makes sense. Any further thoughts on stancing? Hell yeah. Let's talk about, let's see if the chat has any questions about that. Mojo Mott says micro adjustments between defensive and offensive stances. Do we want to explore that or talk about that a little bit, like unpack it? What is a micro adjustment between defensive and offensive stances? Is that too nuanced of a concept for us to dive into?
I don't really think I do like micro adjustments. I do like, this is sort of getting more into footwork. It's not so much stance, but
Yeah.
like really the adjustment between two stances is like which foot is forward for me. Like that's switching stance, but that's just changing the angles at which I can hit someone. Like you think of shield or sword foot back as defensive because it moves your shoulder further away from them, so it moves the threat further away, but that doesn't actually make it less threatening. That just changes the angle at which they can swing at you. And technically being further away could be less threatening, but if they're standing on top of you, then sword foot back could actually be way more terrifying, because if you have a shield, it's going to be way easier for them to wrap over your shield if their sword foot is back. It's way easier to reverse wrap under your shield if their sword foot is back. So I guess micro adjustments to me in like stance is really more like micro movements where like that's more almost like you're like faking but with your feet, which is stuttering basically.
Dalos, were you wanting to jump in on that?
It's well, it's like Horus said, it's some of it's getting into footwork and the movement side of it instead of like the stance part of it. So I don't know if we want to wait to cover it when we get into like the footwork part of it. But I will say, well, it's the micro adjustment things that you do, like if in your stance, you're here. Like if I want to start closing, right? Here's my normal stance. If I want to take a closing step, I might slide my foot up a little bit so I can step further, right? So I wouldn't stay here. If I'm going to take a closing step, I know this needs to be closer for me to get a further step and still maintain my balance. Like if I try to take a closing step just from here, I can only go so far. But if I slide my back foot up to my front foot, I can get a further step and still maintain balance. So again, that kind of moves to footwork, but I don't know. It's part of stance, I guess.
Makes sense.
Maybe we jumped ahead.
I find that a lot of times when you're shifting, like which foot is forward, in that transition, you can find a lot of opportunities there, because when you're taking that transitional step and your feet are kind of in line with each other, if you're just taking like a triangle step to switch, your shoulder is in a different spot, so you can throw at different angles. And whereas if I'm sword foot forward and I want to take a triangle step to switch my foot orientation, from here I can throw like board side wrap or something when I'm moving into shield foot forward, which may seem a lot more defensive, right, on the surface. So that's I find a lot of opportunities in that movement and playing with that.
Makes sense. Let's talk the whys and hows of movement. Dalos, I'm going to let you open this up again because I think this was something you suggested. The whys and hows of movement.
The whys and hows of movement. Okay. Every move should have a purpose. You shouldn't just be moving for no reason, and your move should be well thought out and well thought through. So if I'm going to move defensively, there should be thought behind it. It should be to create opportunity offensively, right? Not just, oh, I got to get away, someone's coming at me. It should be, okay, I'm going to step in this direction to create an opportunity for myself, even though I do need to get away. Like, I think this is not an advantageous position for me to stay in, so I'm going to take a step maybe off to the right that then I can counter from. It wouldn't just be straight backwards is almost always the wrong choice, right? So, I'm going to take the off lateral step and then look for a setup for myself. And then the same thing going forward. I'm not just going to close on someone and then not have a thought behind it. Like, I'm going to close, I'm going to get them to try to like dig in and then take a lateral step off in a direction, generally speaking, depending on how they react, right? There's a thought process behind every movement and what you do based on reactions and what they do. And after a while, when you get better at it, right, it becomes more built in. But you should start by thinking through, I'm going to do these movements based on these things. So have a plan is what it boils down to, but have movement baked into your plan. Start with like just 2 or 3 steps and then go from there. And then I'm going to stop because I could go on and on, but then other people won't have things to say.
It seems like we're focusing on the whys of movement. Coat, what do you think? Why footwork? Why are we moving?
There's a footwork is kind of the major like determining factor on how you maintain range. So like if you're tall and you've got range on somebody, you kind of want to keep it that way, right? So like you have to be able to move backwards at the same pace or at a better angle than your opponent's moving forward. And if you want to close the distance, you have to do so safely, without getting hit. And again, just being mindful about where you're stepping and why you're stepping is super important to doing that. So that's usually the first thing that I think of when I think of like where I'm stepping, is because I don't want to get anywhere near anyone, because I could probably hit them from where I am.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Horus, what are your thoughts? Why movement? Why footwork?
Something that I noticed that newer fighters in Numenor learn really quickly, even though they don't, I'm sure that they never think that this is the case, is that they learn footwork.
Mm-hmm.
And what they learn is, don't let that guy who runs at me really close and kills me get near me. They always stay just out of reach.
Mm-hmm.
Like, without us ever telling them to do this, they learn, I should stay away from this person so that they can't just swing and hit me, but they also don't run so far away that they can't help their friends. They're always ready to then step in and hit that person. And that is like the very basis of footwork, right? Like, don't let yourself be hit by somebody who wants to hit you. Hit them when you have the opportunity to hit them. And so they're doing that at this very basic level. They don't necessarily know how to make that other person do something to hit them besides let them swing at my friend. But they do know, like, I need to not let them just take the position on me to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what you're using your feet to do. Like, you're using your feet to get you in a position to hit the other person, and you're also using them to make sure that they're not in the position to get hit, for you to get hit by them. So I think that the why is that, and then the how is, you get into, well, if they take a lateral step, I probably want to take the same lateral step unless I have a plan, just so that we're now in the same position we were before, so that now we're mirrored again. If they're swinging at me, I'm blocking all the angles that they had before, or they're swinging at something I already knew was open, and then I can respond to that. So it's helping you win that mental game, and then it's also, I guess from there, like, there's other hows, like there's tons of different things that you can do. When you can mirror their steps, you can take a huge step into them so that you can throw a wrap. That's like, if you ever watch a million videos of me, especially older ones, that's all I do. I just take one huge step towards them and I throw a nasty wrap at them and kill them. Like, it's the thing. And then you can take little small steps. You can also do, stomp at them, because you're stuttering so hard and you're just like so full of energy that you are on the toes of your feet and just like stamping the ground, ready to get at them. You can do like a lot of different things to kind of play with your range.
Mm-hmm.
Even just, sinking to your knees. You're not taking a step, but you're changing the level of your stance. You can actually just reach further towards their legs if your shoulder is more in line with their leg. So I guess that's like some whys and hows of moving.
Makes sense. I think the why of footwork, there's some self-evidence to it, of like, obviously, if you just have two people and they never move, then you can't even hit each other, right? You're you're 20 feet away, and without footwork, you can't hit each other. So there has to be footwork, right? And then you take that to the next level of like, well, I'm getting into a better position to hit somebody. I'm getting into a better position to defend against somebody. But then I think take it a step further than that, right? So if we think of everybody fighting, and Woosh was talking about how I don't think I just throw shots and, oh God, don't hit me, I'm hungover, right? But if we really think about what we're doing when we're fighting, our brains are functioning kind of in a computer sense. We have input, which is what our opponent's doing, what we're thinking about, shots that we want to throw, stuff like that. We have our output, which is what we're actually doing. Our brains are computers, and in some ways, and there's only so much data that we can take in at any one time. And so I think a lot of the purpose of footwork too is that if I just stand there, if I'm one of those fighters that just stands there and I'm throwing shots, that's very little information that my opponent has to process. They see what my range is, they see what my available shots are, and they see that I'm static in a 3D plane. their brain is having to process very, very little about how to engage with me. If I start adding in some movements back and forth, that's more data that they have to process. That's more things they have to think about. Everything changes when you change, when you move forward, when you move back. Everything changes. The math is different. The angles are different, right? Overloading my opponent's brain with more information will give me the opportunity, perhaps, for them to make a mistake, for me to sneak something in, for me to trick them in some way. There's too much coming in, they can't focus on it. Now, if I start adding lateral movements, that's even more data that they have to crunch. And it's exponentially more, right? I could go at angles, and so there's more data that they have to crunch in terms of where my sword's going to come from, what I can defend properly, what they're going to do. It just adds more data into the equation. It's very possible for me to sneak something in to do something they don't expect. Level changes, then you start adding even more data for them to crunch. And I think that's kind of a chunk of the why of footwork. It's not just about I could hit you better if I'm in this position. It's also like I'm a living human being, and so is my opponent, and they have to think about all these things. And so unless there's somebody that's just wildly swinging without even paying attention to where I am, the more data that they have to crunch, the better chance I'm going to have fighting them, you know? And, I think that's another chunk of the whys of footwork, is creating more data for them to process. Let's talk about the hows of footwork. How do you footwork? Dalos, do you want to kick us off again?
Sure. So for myself, and this one does take some demonstration. For myself, I find it very important to not do things like this. And some people disagree with me on this, and it's fine. But if you're moving like this, you're 100%. And what I mean by that is, once I make this commitment, all my weight is on my back foot, or on my right foot, right? Once I make this commitment, all my weight is now on my left foot. A good fighter is going to take advantage, at some point in time, is going to take advantage of that commitment, that you've gone and put all your weight on one foot. You can't do anything while your weight is like that. And so what I tend to do, again, back to stance, is I get in my good stance, right? And then I move literally, and you can see my shoes. Back when we fought in the dojo, my shoes would be like, I only wore them in there, and they would be worn out completely from my feet sliding on that carpeted floor. Like, and even outside, I do the same thing, where I just slide my feet, and I don't pick them up that high. So I'm almost always maintaining that stance that I talked about. I'm not getting too high, and I don't bring my feet that far off the ground. Now, when I do want to take a closing step, it even looks like that kind of movement. So it's just a slide. So I'm never like too heavy on one foot or the other one. I might real quick make that kind of move, but still, because again, they're looking for this opportunity. I'm 100%, even backwards, right? If I'm switching leads, it'll be that kind of slide. Even if I don't, see, I like kind of lift up on my toe, if you can see that, and just move my foot back. I'm never like stepping, because 100% on my front foot if I step back that way. So the how is like those way more simple kind of sliding motions for myself. It limits the opportunities that people have to take advantage. So I don't take like huge, big lungy steps and stuff like that too much. They're push all your chips in the middle kind of steps. And I'm a very don't die first kind of fighter. So I not that I never do them, but I do them on a very, very limited basis. So for me, and again, I teach whole classes on this that take 2 hours. So just as an overview, I would say that's the how of movement for me.
I'm going to jump in on that because I also footwork that way. I do slides and I do smaller motions. But there's an additional piece of why I do that. My knees are shit. They're sometimes they fail me, and if I'm taking, and this is something for older fighters to pay attention to too. If I'm taking a big lunge to throw a shot, there is a not inconsiderable chance that my knee's gonna buckle when I land on it like that. Doesn't happen constantly or anything. Most of the time it's okay. But like sometimes it does. I just, I can't put all my weight on, especially my right knee. And so at some point, the reality of being a competitive fighter is that you're going to have chronic injuries, which might include your knees, and you're going to have to adjust your footwork accordingly. Having sliding footwork like that and not putting, not basically committing to huge lunges is a way to, A, protect yourself from like, if your knees start to buckle. Because if that happens, I might be out for the day. Like my knee failed and it's gonna be inflamed now and it's gonna suck. But also like I'm also probably gonna lose that fight, right? Like I'm gonna step and my knee's gonna fucking scream at me, and then I'm getting hit while that's happening because I'm like, so there's kind of an additional, a little bit of an old man advantage, to doing footwork like that, is that like it's just kind of easier on your body too. Coat, I'm gonna let you jump in. What your how do you footwork? What's your process?
So there's a bunch of different things that I'll use to outposition people or get them to make a mistake. You can take steps at different paces. How long or short your steps are. How fast you're taking the steps. But a lot of my favorite ones are those like triangle steps where in the change of where my feet are, I can either, hit someone one way or another. I like to take some of those smaller steps also. Sometimes when you do catch someone out of position and you are taking one of those smaller steps, you can kind of push off before you finish your step and take that step into a lunge to get a little bit more range, and you can catch people off guard that way. But you have to take the smaller steps for that to really work. Because if you just do that all the time, then people are going to catch on.
Makes sense. Horus, how do you footwork?
I think there's quite a few that I like to use. I am a big fan of the super lunge. I wouldn't do it as often as I default to it. Like I love watching my fights post them on YouTube, watch them throughout the day, and be like, wow, there I get stuck just doing the lunge over and over again, and I keep dying for it. I think there's a time and place for it, but you shouldn't be doing it all the time. It really should be like when you do it, it is the kill. Like you have a very high percentage chance of doing it, and then when you do it too, like your other foot should come back to like pull to you very quickly, so that when you do that big lunge, like you just get back in your stance right away. It just changes like where you are on them suddenly. And ideally when you do the lunge is when they actually are taking a step towards you. Like if you can time your lunge so that you're slightly off stepping and then you're like stepping into them while they're stepping into you, like that can really mess with them. I think like a classic one that I like to do, and let's see if I can do this slightly up, is like if I'm standing here and I want to lunge at them, I sort of, say I'm like this and sword foot forward, but I actually want to hit them and wrap their shoulder. Like I'll do something, and this is sort of more on the footwork or more footwork tools here, is I'll take like fake steps towards them. I'll stutter them. I'll go like I'm going to step, and then I'll even take like this tiny step. And so you can start like cheating your range a little bit, because when you're faking the steps and you're kind of like stepping, and then sometimes you also take this little step, like you're slowly micro adjusting your range. And if they're someone who like stands there and they don't really move and they're really still, like now I can get like, if I do this enough, I don't know, moving, where am I going to go? Like I get a couple inches on them before I take my step. And then ideally, like I don't actually really want to then step like this and try to wrap over you with my right arm. I actually kind of want to do this, like I'm going to step with my right leg, and then I actually want to step with my left and throw over. And I want to do that when you come in to hit me. Maybe I'm doing this and my right leg's closer to you now. And so you go to leg shot me, and that's when I step in. By changing like this, your leg shot is actually more likely to hit my shield because I've moved my shield in your range, and then I'm swinging up and over. And say you do throw for my leg, my fake is also going to come over from this. It's going to look like I'm going to cross. So you're going to block your cross, swing down, and then I'm going to over your shield. So you're using both a lunge, a stutter, and a small step. And then you don't ever have to actually go into the lunge. Like from here, you could just make a bunch of small steps over and over. I can switch my feet. I also like if people charge you, switching your, like just straight up switching your feet, like in place, like totally different angle to swing from. And if you can do that with the shot at the same time, like you can transfer all of your energy into your sword and hit people really hard. You don't really have to do that anymore. But back in the day, if you know, you had some big dude in armor and it's Belgarth, so like some dudes are just super thick. You're a tiny 5'8" dude, like you got to hit them really hard somehow. And when they charge at you, you just switch your feet and wrap at the same time, and you crush people in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Then you only got to hit them one more time, and then they're dead because, of course, they're wearing body armor and charging you. So
you only have to hit them one more time. Per the rules.
I only have to hit them one more time.
That's fair. Oh, at New Winter Closer, I forgot some kid was fighting next to me, and he had gone. You know, remember when you guys were bullying us on your left flank for a little while?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember him.
He said, "Man, that guy hits really hard," and I was like, I think I told him, I said, that means he likes you.
Yeah. I told somebody that today, actually. I told, they were like, violence is a compliment. And I was like, for me, violence is a compliment. That means I feel like I have to hit you for me to win. If I'm hitting you light, that means that I probably don't think I have to try that hard.
Let's talk about training footwork. Dalos, you want to kick us off again?
Yeah, sure. I did a lot of basketball footwork workout and boxing footwork workouts. So I would say that those are kind of the things that I would recommend. Thor a long time ago did footwork classes at SKBC, and he had people do jump rope and the kind of the ladder drills. Mm-hmm. And those are all things that I think all sports use. Mm-hmm. But basketball and boxing definitely both utilize those. So I did some of that, but like a rocker step is what basketball calls the kind of fake step you're talking about. And that it goes into a lot of setups for crossovers and all kinds of basketball things we don't need to talk about, but I use them to set up all kinds of things in fighting as well. So I would say that if you're looking to train your feet, a jump rope's good, but you have to be careful as you get older because it's hard on your knees. So I'm not going to go tell you go do 1,000 jump ropes a day and you're like 50. I'm not sure that that's the healthiest idea. So definitely be in tune with your body, but find some things that really get your feet moving and have good balance. And then the other thing is just get in tune with your feet and understanding how you're fighting and how you're moving. And I forgot to mention it earlier, but really focus on making sure that your shots land as your foot lands, right? Mm-hmm. And Horus kind of talked about it, but you do want that because then everything is tied together. So your movements, boom, no matter what your shot is, everything gets tied together, and you'll come back into your base stance easier if your impacts are in alignment.
Makes sense. Coat, how do you train your footwork?
So I would agree. I think a lot of boxing material is super helpful. But I guess what I did initially was when I first started fighting, I found all the SKBC videos and I watched some like footwork videos, and and they were talking about like get this stance, and you want to take like steps so that you're never off balance, and you want like your head to be, you know, about level. And so what I did, you know, when I was younger and still learning I just chase my dog around like that, and you know, let the dog chase me, and that was super fun because I got to like give my dog some exercise and play with the dog and practice footwork. But now I would definitely say boxing drills.
Okay.
They're just super good.
Our Mojo Mud asks, is there something like jump rope training but easier on the knees? Would boxing drills fill that gap?
I don't know that they're quite exactly like jump rope. You can definitely do things that maybe aren't as repetitive. I think like jump rope is very, very repetitive. Maybe like calf raises and stuff like that might be kind of close to it. But I can't think of anything that's just exactly like jump rope because it's pretty unique of an exercise. But maybe just do less than, like, people tell you crazy amounts of jump ropes, and I would say if you do want to do it, I wouldn't discourage you, but I would be very careful with that exercise. It's pretty hard on you.
Start small.
Vixen 2500 says the practice they do for footwork is they have a partner and they mirror the steps facing each other, especially if the partner has a lot more experience. That sounds kind of interesting. Like, that could be fun because that's also teaching you to look at your opponent's feet, so there might be some value there that you can dig out of that.
I've done that one. That one's good.
Horus,
noticing how you can mess with their footwork too.
Makes sense.
Like what you do when you step that makes them step wrong. I'm like a really bad person for drilling. I don't think I've ever really pelled or done any drills almost at all outside of like block strike and attack block attack. But what I really like to do for when I'm working on my footwork is I like sparring people, and when I fight them, I really focus on both feeling my feet, so like feeling the soles of my feet, and then when I take steps, I'm taking steps and I'm watching everything that they're doing. Now I sort of have some idea at least of how I want to step. Walking through your steps a lot just helps. If you've never done it before, just like literally stand up, walk through all the steps you're going to take. When you swing the sword, you know, step when you're swinging the sword. That is one thing that actually, Dalos, you brought up that I really, really did a lot when I was learning how to sword fight, is I would watch those spin videos, and then I would like swing the sword in the air and take the step over and over. That also, if you aren't like, don't have huge arms or something, you can hit people way harder if you do that. You do not actually need to swing your arm really hard to hit somebody hard if your whole body moves into the step. You'd be surprised, like even getting somebody brand new, you have them hit your shield, and if you're getting them to step into the step and they're just swinging their arm, like they will be, you know, hitting that shield and it'll be making a huge noise. Everybody will hear it. It'll sound like they're swinging at you super hard, and all they're doing is stepping and chopping. So get used to doing that, and then when you fight people too, take the steps, watch how they move in response to you, and then this is another reason I really like taking video, is watch when you're taking the steps, what you're doing, watch it in like 0.25 or even 0.5 speed, and watch when you take steps and they take steps, where are you stepping and where are they stepping to end you in positions where you get the kill or they get the kill. And then think about that again next time you spar. I also recommend doing that right before you go spar next. Like, don't watch it and then don't think about it for 3 days. Watch it, then go spar thinking about their feet when you've just watched your own feet, because you'll notice that you do things, and it'll be way easier to not do those things if you have in mind that you've seen yourself doing them. It's way harder to notice them when you're actually taking the steps than compared to having just watched yourself take the steps. You'll be more aware of your feet, and you'll be aware that you can move them differently. instead of just doing the same thing over and over.
Makes a lot of sense. I like the idea just in general of like watching videos of you fight right before you go to spar, so that like things are when you're, because you see the video and you're like, why did I do that? And then, you know, having that information
Definitely.
immediately going into a fight makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Focus on just the one thing though. Don't try to like look at everything that you're doing. Like, oh, I'm throwing all these wraps or whatever. No, just like do the same wrap over and over, but step differently. If you're focusing on your feet, watch your feet, watch their feet, then go spar, watch their feet.
What I try to, the way that I try to teach footwork to especially newer fighters is I do a thing I call the shuffle. I'm gonna pull up my little dot cam here. So like a lot of times when you see newer fighters fight, plant, right? They plant, they're static, and they're just kind of like, you know, they're just kind of staying put. You know, and like something, a privilege we have as experienced fighters is that we have a lot of muscle memory, and so we have a lot of free brain power to think about things like footwork and stuff like that. But newer fighters, a lot of time, the crackle cam, thanks, Swoosh, appreciate it. A lot of times, newer fighters, they're thinking about, I gotta throw, and I gotta, what's my opponent? You know, there's so much going on in their brain because none of it is active muscle memory or something like that. And so it's kind of relatively impossible for them to focus on fighting, but also think about moving their feet. So it's something that they really have to think about and incorporate before the fight starts. So when people are in what I call butt sniffing range, which is you can't actually hit somebody, but you're close enough to be a threat, I tell people, I say, shuffle. Do this, right? Put your guard down, put your shield down, put your stuff down, evaluate what they're doing, and just shuffle. Just move like you got ants in your pants. And so what's this doing? This is teaching you, this is telling your brain that I'm moving my feet. I'm moving my feet. I'm moving my feet. So that when you actually are fighting and you get in your stance and you're fighting, you still have this like latent command in your brain that says, move my feet, move my feet. So I'm fighting, I have this momentum of shuffling around and just kind of walking and just aimlessly moving. So then I'm fighting, I engage, and I start thinking, you know, move my feet, move my feet, move my feet, transition. It's already there in my brain. That's the last thing I actively thought before, you know, all this stuff took over. The second thing it does is if you just get in the habit of doing that, of just kind of pacing, you know, and shuffling and moving around, when you're in butt sniffing range, you are actively changing ranges. Immediately, you're actively changing ranges, you're actively changing angles, and what that's doing is that's denying your opponent information. You know, if I see a lot of like newer and even mid-level fighters, they approach fights with their full guard up like this, and they just kind of walk into it. And a good fighter is able to look at what they're doing and start making plans and being like, I see what your stancing is, I see where your guard is, I see where my openings are, and they're able to just process all that information. If you approach a fight with your shit down like this and you're just kind of shuffling around, you look like you have no idea what you're doing, or you look like you're just anxious or whatever. Nobody's learning anything from that. Nobody's looking at that and saying, okay, this is how I'm going to approach that fight when I fight this person, because that information is all being obscured by this weird shuffling thing you're doing. So that's what I tell a lot of new people when we start talking about footwork, is just shuffle your feet around, move around, and just plant that seed in your head that my feet are moving as a part of this fight. And a lot of times that helps them out. That takes hold, and you know they start thinking about moving their feet whenever they're fighting. The last thing it's doing is it's getting your adrenaline up, right? Like I'm pacing, I'm moving my feet around like that. That's raising my heart rate a little bit. That's getting me going. That's like what. So whenever we start fighting, that like I care and I'm trying and I'm doing my best. That kind of mindset is already occurring in my head, because it's so easy to get trapped in lazy fighting where you're not trying, you're just kind of like, you just do the same thing, you're not thinking about it, you're not moving your feet. shuffling around, that's priming your body for explosive energy. Let's go. We're doing this. I'm pacing like a wild animal, you know? And so it's a way to kind of manipulate yourself into having that barely contained power that's getting ready to explode. But then conversely, with your gear down, you're resting your arms. You're not burning calories. Keeping if you have your gear down like this while you're pacing around, you're not burning those calories. You're getting a little bit of an active rest in between fights. And if you're ditching for 6 hours an event, every calorie you save, you know, every little bit of lactic acid that you don't create in your arms, that all is going to pay dividends, because over 6 hours, that shit adds up real fast. So that's another way to just keep yourself going. And at the end of the day, the more rested you are, the less gassed you are, the better you fight. So get in those active rests when you can. That's my thoughts. That's my thoughts as far as like training footwork, is just start with the shuffle. Start by just moving your feet and teaching yourself that that's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts about training footwork? We got time. Let's, if you have some thoughts, let's talk about it.
There was one more drill that I've done. It was it's more of like a range control drill, mm-hmm. but it all of it's incorporates footwork. It was one where you get two people, they're both single blue, and it's a turn-based one.
Okay.
Where the person whose turn it is gets one step, or I don't remember if it's one step in a lunge or 2 steps in a lunge, but they get a certain amount of steps, and then at the end of their turn, they get one swing, right? Mm-hmm. And the person whose turn it is not gets as many number of steps as they want. So, your goal is to hit your opponent, and your opponent can't block. But you get to see, like, doing that, like, okay, if I take this step a little bit shorter, right, maybe they don't back up as much, so maybe I can still hit them. That's one that I've had fun with, and I've seen people have success with it.
Dalos, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, dancing, I would say, is fun, and it can help with your footwork. And then spinning is both super fun, and I would say specifically like the backspin. Mm-hmm. So in this version of it too, because there's a lot of ways to throw it. So I'm going to tell you real quickly. I won't demonstrate like all the necessary things, but just what I'm talking about, enough information so that you can go do it. Like where you, see if I can get the right angle here, where you step behind, right? You wind up and then you unwind. That's the entire motion that you need. There's lots of ways to throw a backspin. I think this is the one that trains your feet the best, and you can do it advancing. So if I'm coming forward, right, I step across my own foot here and then just boom, unwind. If I'm going backwards, again with that slide, I step behind and unwind. If you learn to just throw that shot, okay, then you're consciously thinking, okay, I need to get my back foot behind. Then you will train your feet to get in the right place and to get that shot. One quick tip on that shot: if you put your sword here ahead of time, then instead of having to travel all the way around, it just boom, way faster. So if you're going to do it, do that too. It'll help you. But I think that learning to throw spins is a very good way to train your feet, because you have to really think about it to get them in the right places. So
it also really help you turn when people approach you from odd angles. You don't have to like take a weird couple of steps to like change your stance to face them. Like you can just take one step and then be turned and fighting them.
Let's talk about adapting footwork to different kits. And so what I mean by that is like, and this was requested when we initially started talking about the topic. This was requested by somebody. So not just sword and board, but, Florentine, single sword, pole arms, red weapons. What changes? What's different about, because we've kind of approached this from a sword and board point of view, and I feel like a lot of times footwork, when you're talking about footwork, you're talking about single sword or sword and board. How do we adapt that footwork to other kids? What do we do? Anybody can jump in, with their thoughts.
I have so many thoughts, so stop me if I go too long. I want to talk about two sword and red. So two sword, the sort of standard school of thought, if you would like watch a Peter the Quake video, is that you are foot matching because you're hand matching them, and I actually hate doing that. I fight opposite foot, because what people like to do when they have a sword and their sword and board and you're foot matching them is that they want to swing really hard outside. And Peter is really fucking strong, and he can move his left arm all the way out and block when they're righty, and has no problem doing that. And if you could do that, good for you. My arm doesn't do this very well. Like, this shoulder is messed up. I pulled something a long time ago. It just doesn't want to go as high as my right arm can. It's really easy for me to get my right arm all the way up, even though it's actually more sore because I also messed this one up. Like, I just really struggle to do it. Even when I'm doing this right now, I hear it crackling. So I really prefer to fight opposite foot. And what this does when I fight is it actually makes my left hand far more threatening, because much like when I was talking about wraps with switching to back foot when you're sword and board, you can do the same thing when you're left foot forward. And if I keep stepping into their shield, I am not threatened by their shield. If they decide to swing over their shield, well, they've just completely exposed themselves. They can put their shield all the way over if they want, but now all I have to do is take my left foot, step all the way to their left side, into them as hard as I can, and wrap around them, and they'll never twist around to block themselves enough if they just hard cross into me to try to kill me, because I have this arm seemingly vulnerable forward. The other thing is that this stance makes it way easier to stab you, because now I'm basically like right hand forward versus right hand forward person. Now they want to stab me because of that. That's a really great way to kill a two-sworder. It's way harder for them to stab. It's not actually easier to stab you, though, if I then take a step with my left foot offline towards you. Now I've turned my body to the point where it's hard to stab me, and so this happens constantly to me now as people try to stab me.
It is frustratingly hard to fucking stab you.
I just step into your stab, and you completely whiff, and I'm hitting you because I'm on top of you. So you can use the way that you're standing two sword to just bait them into doing things that are silly. And if people don't notice the way that you're standing, they'll swing outside. You'll just block because my left hand is already in the position to block, and chop their arm, or if they lean their shoulder over, or chop them here. You can kind of do all these things, and then say that I do take that step, I'm fighting, and you block, and now we're fighting outside, and I'm still willing to fight like this, and then you hard step in. I can still step back, block with my right hand, and then wrap you around your shield even while you're swinging at me and blocking with it, because I have changed the stance to where I have this advantage again. There's no rules. You don't actually have to stand in the canonical stances. You can switch your feet between the two, and you can use that to gain steps when they don't think you're going to gain steps, and you can use it to mess with their perception of how far away you are, because even though it's hard to change how far away your actual body is, it's not hard to change how your angles are presented towards them by changing between two stances and taking steps.
Makes sense. Coat, Dalos, you want to chime in on two sword stancing and footwork?
This is amazing, because Horus fights Florentine exactly how I do, with a couple modifications. And I actually argued with PDQ about this, because I'm like, everyone fights Florentine that way because y'all have been teaching it that way for way too long, and I 100% disagree with fighting Florentine that way. And I love PDQ, but I don't like that style of Florentine fighting at all. It's very block strikey, and I don't like blocking. I like dodging. So I like blocking with my shield, but I don't like blocking with my sword that much. I'd rather be hitting people with it. And if I'm understanding what Horus does, it's a lot of dodging. There is some blocking when you have to, but there's a lot more dodging involved with fighting low that way. And why it's very successful is you're killing a lot with your left hand. But I disguise it even further. And we're getting off topic maybe a bit, but this topic is awesome. And it's stance and footwork based, right? So your left foot's here, okay, but I keep my left sword back and I present my right sword. So now they really don't know what my threat is, because they're just, oh, Dalos is right-handed, and oh, everyone's fights with the right hand. So now they'll attack my right arm like a huge idiot, because your range is dictated by your front foot, which people forget. And so then they're messing with that, and I'm like, hop. And I like, as soon as that arm comes anywhere near me, my range is actually dictated by this, and I just kill them. And of course, boardmen, right-handed boardmen, their hip is right there, so I snipe their hip all day long. My left hand is as good as my right hand. A lot of people don't know that. And to answer the original question, as far as like adapting to different styles, I cheated. So I fight single sword left-handed. I did that because it now matches my board footwork.
Okay.
Yeah, that's smart.
So I don't have to change anything, right? This looks exactly like I look when I'm fighting sword and shield. This Florentine style that I'm using looks exactly like I look when I'm fighting sword and shield, right? So I would encourage anyone, not that you have to do this, but I would encourage anyone to explore this, because the more consistent you can keep your footwork across all your weapon styles, the better off you are. Not that I couldn't change, like I can go more traditional Florentine, and you can still kind of keep the consistency, but if you have all your styles match your footwork all the way across, then I don't really have to think about doing anything different. It all kind of stays the same. And that did play a big role in why I decided to fight single sword left-handed. I'm like, well, my feet will already match, and I wanted my left hand to be really good, so I always just fought single left-handed. And then this flow style, when I started really thinking about it, was because I'm like, I just wanted to match my board footwork. So
makes sense. Yeah. Coat, thoughts on Florentine footwork?
I do the my lead foot matches their weapon side, but that's just because my left hand is not very smart. My left arm is not very smart, so I have to trick myself into using it somehow. And that's the best way that I've found.
Makes sense. But that's good. That's valuable, because that's like the number one thing that a lot of times people will say when you're like, well, do you ever fight Florentine? They're like, well, my left hand can't do anything. If you use your footwork to basically trick your left hand that you have to do something with it, it's a great way to train it and actually have your left arm do stuff.
Right. I'll have to give that other way a try, because that seems good. But yeah, when I fight lefties with foot match, it's just my right hand doing everything, and my left arm just doesn't do anything.
Okay.
So I'll have to give that other style a try.
Go ahead.
What I was gonna say is, it's actually funny because I really, really like to block strike. Like I love that. In fact, one of my win conditions when I fight is if I get them to block strike, I will win. Like 90% of the time, if we are in just exchange, I will win that fight. Like there are very few people who I like struggle to, I wouldn't even say struggle, like who have decent chance like getting into the just like swing block, swing block, swing block, swing block once we're really close. Like I just love doing that. But when you're two sword, if you want to live, like it just really helps to not have to block all of the shots. You want to get yourself into a position where when you're swing block, they're panicked and they are not like thinking about what they're doing. They're just like, oh my God, get this guy off of me. Because that's where I want to fight. Like, I don't want to be swing block with two swords because it's way too much to think about. And he's thinking about what to do and like faking me and stuff. I want him reacting, throwing his primary returns, and I'm just swinging, blocking the obvious shot, swinging, blocking the obvious shot, and just hammering them with both sides. And if they, hold their shield somewhere that makes sense, then you're just crushing their legs because they can't stop you because you're on top of them. So I really like using that to start my fight, get my range, especially if there's someone who's going to take a big step outside, then it's easier to make that block. It actually improves your block strike basically by making your block easier. Like it's so much less difficult to block a hard outside shot left-handed if your right foot is forward, because I'm already turned all the way. I can reach my arm all the way behind me. Like, you're just not swinging around me and hitting me in the butt. That's not happening if I'm right foot forward. But if I'm left foot forward, you could step past my toe, like your toes could go past my toes on my outside, and I can't actually move into a position where I can block you. So you can use that to sort of improve your block striking, get yourself in a good position. And that's maybe something too, when you block strike, you can pivot. You don't have to stay far away from them. Step into them, on top of them, and fight them with your shoulder pushed into them. You'll notice that it's not impossible nor even hard to block your side that should be vulnerable because it's close to them with this sword, as long as your sword is in between their sword and your body.
Makes sense. I like to add in a little bit of extra lateral movement with Florentine, just because since you have threats on both sides, adding in some additional lateral movement, you should be laterally moving and thinking about that dimension with everything you do. But I think it's even more important with Florentine, because that extra step to the left is going to help that stab into the soft parts, right? That extra step to the right is going to be able to get a wrap in there. But also, if I'm fighting Florentine and I step to their board side, I now have an inner channel that I can start working. I can throw an outside wrap with my left hand, and then as they go to block it, I can just shoot straight in with a chop and hit them in the shoulder. So I think thinking just Florentine is a dance, and just thinking a little more three-dimensionally when you're fighting Florentine is just going to help with that, I think. Let's talk red. Let's talk two-handed swords and glaives and all that stuff. How do we change what's different about our footwork in that situation?
So when you're fighting red, your main advantage versus footwork is very similar when you're fighting against other reds, but when you're fighting against someone who, especially a board where they have this ability to step into you and soak shots, you basically have to be able to step offline. If you can run backwards as fast as they can run forwards, LOL, you're gonna win. But it's pretty hard to do that and stand up straight. With reds especially, you must always step so that your body is straight up and down. I cannot red fight and lean and swing at someone. As soon as I'm leaning, that person should run into me, because I am never going to stand up straight and recover and be able to gain distance away from them and block at the same time. Whereas if I'm standing up straight and I'm fighting red, right, if they can run at me, they can charge at me even, and they can swing both sides. But as long as I'm standing up straight, I can block. I can do this all day. There's actually, I was thinking about this a lot at Oktoberfest because I was fighting red in the night pits. And at one point, I think it was Fumbles, what ran up to me and threw 7 shots, and it was so fast. And he's just on top of me, and I just was thinking about standing up straight. I was just block. And then, Glass runs up behind him and kills him. Whoa, I was screwed. He was on top of me. There was no way I was ever living through that. Eventually I was going to miss a block, but I would have died instantly if I had been leaning over to try to swing at him. When I swung at him, I stood up, swung at him, and then blocked and took the step back to get the block in the first place. And then I could continue to step back and change my direction and move my blocks around. And even when he would do a fake or something, I could still move to block because I wasn't giving myself Like I wasn't basically committing to it by moving my feet in such a way that I couldn't change where my arms were. So really when I'm fighting red, I'm always standing up. I'm not leaning over. I pretty much almost never want to lean over unless I'm fighting somebody who's like legged, and then
Mhm.
I'm leaning over because I can just like get a little bit extra range on my red shot, and I'm just chopping their shield away from a range that they have one shot. I'm gonna throw it. They're gonna swing at me. I'm gonna raise my arms up and block their shot, and then hit them again. Um, so that's when I'm fighting red, that's what I'm always thinking about. And then you always want to step offline because you're just not, you need to keep your range advantage. Like you need to be able to continue to swing at them because any sword and border fighting you is on a timer. Not only do they have to get close enough to you, but if I continue to block strike with them, their shield goes away
Mhm.
and their advantage goes away. You don't actually want to be standing there holding your blue versus my red. I'm just going to, one, I can just probably hit you through your sword. I can just reach so far that you probably can't block it. And if you commit really hard to block a really hard red shot and then your sword goes out really far, well, it's really easy for me to not actually throw super hard and just hit you, normal strength in your arm. It's really easy to switch between the two. So think about how you're stepping. You always want to step a little bit offline when you're fighting people. And that also helps you stay close to your teammates because your teammates are going to be a huge boon to you. They don't necessarily want to run into you if there's a sword and board guy who can just like turn and chop their arm.
Yeah.
Because then this whole thing is for nothing. They're standing there with a chopped arm and a shield and they can't do anything to you. So always stand up straight when you're fighting red. Keep in your stance. Like it's really important you stay in your stance, and you don't have to leave it because you don't have to. In Belgarth, at least, you don't have to reach around them. You can just keep hitting their shield for free whenever you have a free shot, and like it goes away.
Mhm.
You just kill them just by continuing to fight. So always stand up fighting when I'm red, and then I'm always kind of stepping offline. And then I'll say the last one because the last one actually is really a spear thing too.
Okay. Coat, I know you've mentioned that red fighting's not necessarily your thing, but feel free to jump in if you have any thoughts on it.
I think there's a lot less. I mean, again, I don't fight red too often, but I think that there's just a lot less room for error
Mm-hmm.
with red. Like you just have to be so precise. If you take like a couple inches too far of a step, you just kind of die. In my experience, I just kind of die at least. But it's all about maintaining the range and finding the angles.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I found, and I think Horus did a good job of talking about that.
Dalos, I know you've done some red fighting. Any thoughts about footwork stancing as far as red fighting? I know it's not your primary thing, but feel free to chime in.
I haven't done a ton, but I would say, kind of echo the sentiment. Like
Mm-hmm.
your margin for error is small, but I would say it's really, really important to step into your shots with red
Mm-hmm.
more than anything else. Because if you're off balance throwing, then I feel like, especially with polearm, you're gonna get pulled into bad situations
Mm-hmm.
if you throw the pole and you're not like stepping into shots and maintaining your balance as you throw, and you will end up either dying from that or not recovering fast enough. And especially situations like jugging, when you're supposed to be spamming pull shots as quickly as possible, you really need to like step into those and get them out there and continuously move with the pull. So I think your stance and your movement really has to be like on point for that.
A part of me is really terrified to think about the idea of bringing jugging to Belgarth. I'm very scared of that idea.
I feel like it's been done.
It probably has.
That's why they don't do it anymore.
that tracks. Dale, as you said what I was going to say, I think a good chunk where it's different with red fighting is that you have to generate power with your feet when you're red fighting. Even if you got the big guns, right? Like you have to generate power by stepping into shots and throwing your hips. You're just, especially if you're fighting an old school guy, you're not going to hit his shield hard enough for him to take that red shot unless you are using footwork to do so. Or he's just standing there and you happen to swing, without, even then I just use my hips. But like, you're just going to have to think about that aspect of generating power with your feet. That's going to be, that moves up in the priority chain as far as things you have to do, because you have to land those hard shits. You have to land those hard hits on the shield, for it to count. I guess if you shit on my shield, I'm probably going to take it off too, but
shit on them.
Let's talk about, what other kits can we talk about? Spear. Let's talk about spear.
So there's not sort of the same for spear, where you do want to always kind of stand up straight. There's a lot more room for I can lean over and throw a spear stab because I'm 8 feet away and they're not going to cover 8 feet instantly. Mm-hmm. And even if they do, as long as it's really more about holding your spear in stance, because as long as I can keep my pointy thing pointed at you, like it's very threatening, especially if I can point it at something where I can hit you. But something that you can do when you're fighting spear, or this is a really good shot when you're fighting red, is if I like stab at you, right? Like your sword is in the way, and it's kind of this is very easy to block. Like my sword is already here. I can kind of do like all sorts of things. You can't hurt my hands. I can do whatever. And actually, yes, Mojo Bot, perfect. It's all about those angles, right? So if I'm fighting spear or I'm fighting red, I can take this step here, and then I can stab like this. And I can stab down. And now this is such a different angle, because if somebody's stabbing at you from like here, right? And not my sword's here, like this is actually really hard to block. Like now I only have my hands to block. Like I have to be very precise. And like if you're Peter the Quick, maybe you just like move and you block and their spear pops out of their hands because your forearms are made of steel and you blocked with your fist. But like most people can't consistently do that, even if they're good at it. So it really, really helps to move and kind of step off line and stab at people. And then when you do that too, you also give yourself the opportunity to like stay in your stance. The same thing is true when you're fighting spear, and like I'm trying to say I'm not fighting like this, because that's like a thing that I do that's just dumb because I'm trying to extend my reach, but I'm like actually fighting with the spear. So I have it like this, and I'm trying to stand around you because I have better control like this, and I can't stab at your head, so it doesn't help to stand like this anyways. I can only stab you in the legs. One, you still want to be able to do the same thing, because if you're fighting a board, I want to be able to stab at your leg. When you block with your shield, I want to be able to stab up. Oh my God, you can't really see that. When I stab at your legs, this is the classic. If you're a spear fighter, this is how you kill boardmen. You stab at their legs, they block, and then you step offline and you stab them in the shoulder pocket. You watch Casey or Himmel or Batman or whoever do it a million times. They stab at your legs, and then it's the circle up. It's like a fencing disengage, basically. Well, when you're fighting other spears, you can also do the same thing. And if you're not standing up straight, it's easy to land even if you're not standing up straight, but you can actually, instead of disengaging, you can actually take your spear and put it against their spear. And if you can get up and under their spear, you can actually pull their spear up, right? And they can disengage from you. And as soon as they disengage, you can just stab them. Because for a second, their spear is not pointed at you. There's no threat. You stab them, and then as long as you're still standing in your stance, right? Anything that they do, you can then step away from it. So I'm stepped like this. So if they stab at me and they stab over here and they try to stand under, I can just step this way. If they stab at me over here, then I can just keep stepping into my step and block, and I can even stab at them again, and you can even do like a sort of block strike thing. But you really just want to, one, stay in your stance, stay upright so that you can continue to play with their spear. And then if you can, you want to like get under their spear so that, and either disengage when they stab at you, you like kind of move your spear out of the way and stab them, or you actually let them stab at you, or grab their spear if you just get close enough and actually move it to where you can stab because you're in the position to stab. And then as you're doing that as well, you want to make sure that when you stab, you're always taking that step, because when you take that step, you don't need to stab with the spear. And this is like way less accurate because I can't control what I'm doing as much when I'm using all my muscles to drive. If I step and I'm just holding it there, I can still adjust my spear as I'm moving. So I always want to be stepping when I'm stabbing.
That makes a lot of sense. Dalos, Coat, have any experience with spears?
My big thing is that, like, when I'm spearing, my stance changes. Like, I always want my spear pointed at, if I'm fighting a boardman, at their sword hip or their sword shoulder, their sword side. Whether they're right-handed or left-handed, I adjust my stance based on that. But I think that you've got, if you're spearing on a line just in a field fight or whatever, you've got a lot more leeway to like make mistakes. Not that you want to, but I think it's more forgiving than some of the other styles because you have such reach and you have teammates that are in front of you. So I think it's a good base spot that you can start to learn footwork and find a stance that works for you.
I think too. In terms of spear, and again, spear is my actual worst style. Your stancing and your footwork changes depending upon if they're wearing armor or not. Because if they're not wearing armor, you can end your stabs and movement. You can get a little bit of extra range with a single hand release. But if they're wearing armor, you have to use both hands to stab them, or it doesn't count. So I think that your stancing and your footwork kind of has to adjust based on what their loadout is in some ways. Could be wrong. I suck at spear, but that's from what I understand.
No, that's definitely true.
Whoosh did ask for an arm cam, so here you go, buddy. We got a little arm cam for you. There you go. That's it. Okay. Let's talk closing thoughts on footwork. What are our closing thoughts? Anything to leave everybody with? Dalos, I'm going to start with you.
I would just say, be patient with yourself as you start to pay attention to it. Horus touched on it a bit. Reverse engineer your fights. He was talking about doing it with video, but I just gave this advice to one of our acolytes when I was visiting Portland. Take a notebook with you to fighter practice and write down, not every fight, but like a few fights in a night, write down what got me into the situation where I died, what happened. And specifically with your feet, write down, I took this step, they did this, I took this step, and this landed me in the situation where I died. Because 9 times out of 10, your feet are what gets you in trouble. And if you don't start taking those steps that get you in trouble, you'll start dying less. And dying less is the goal. Don't die first, and then you'll start figuring out how to win more often. So I think that that would be my closing thought.
Makes sense. Coat, final thoughts on footwork.
I'd just say mindful practice. One thing that I've done is just like thought about, why did I take that step in that location? I could have put it, like 20 degrees in either direction, but why did I step there? And just trying to think through, individual fights, as Dalos was saying, and being mindful about where you're putting your feet, and think about everything above that later.
Makes sense. Horus, final thoughts.
I want to shout out the notebook again. The first time people told me to watch video, I watched video and I could not follow the fights at all. Watch your video, rewatch the fight over and over again, and write down in your notebook what happened in the fight. And if you continue to do that 10, 20, 100 times, you will eventually be able to tell what's happening in the fight just by looking at it. You won't have to write it down. But write it down first. You'll start figuring it out really quick. You'll be able to see it. You'll be surprised at how many of your fights are exactly the same. And then 2, you want to not die. But my thing that I like to do, because I like to learn by doing, is go find yourself a regen battle at an event. And if you really just want to work on your footwork, just see where you can stand. How close can you stand to them before you get hit? Just walk in places that you feel like you shouldn't. When you're scared to walk, just step into them. See what people swing at. See how close you can get. Like, see when you step what they do. Like, those are like the best times when you just like can keep repeating it over and over again. It's a regen battle, it's sparring, whatever. Regen battles are really good because you'll learn really quick, like, where can I run where I get chopped by glaives, and where can I run that I don't get chopped by glaives. That's my advice. Just do it over and over and pay attention to that one thing. When you want to work on your feet, just pay attention to your feet. See where you can go.
Quick interjection. Ghost would like to know, what's the best way to instill habit to mindfully practice thinking about your feet without attending practice? Let's say there's not practice nearby. Let's say you're just, maybe you're injured or something. What's the best way to think about, footwork? Whoosh suggests have a toddler. But that
meditation.
Meditation? Tell me
Yeah,
more.
so I Arthon is the person I've fought the most. I've probably fought him 1,000,000 times, and that's not an exaggeration. But in my head, I fought him 3,000,000 times, and that's not an exaggeration, because I wanted, when we first started fighting, he beat me all the time. He was way better than me. But I was like, it won't be this way all the time. I'm definitely going to be better than you. And so I would fight him all the time in my head. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. Like replaying the fights over and over and over again. Like, what's the path to victory? The fights that I do, and how did that happen? And in my, like, you can only fight someone when you're in practice so many times, but in your mind, you can fight them over and over and over again. The mind is a muscle just like anyone else. So you train yourself to like be ready for the fight. You can do that all the time. And elite athletes, I could give you hundreds of examples of them, but they all say that meditation is like their most valuable tool, and that visualization while they're meditating of how it goes, getting themselves into that zone and being successful. So I would say there's your answer to that question.
Makes sense. My final thoughts on footwork. At the end of the day, footwork makes the footwork wins you fights. Footwork is absolutely critical to your development as a fighter. It's not something you can ignore. You just can't. So you have to pay attention to it. Do you have to train it to be a decent fighter? Maybe not. Maybe you can be okay without training it. I tell you this much, it's not going to hurt. And the first thing, whenever you talk to fighters, whenever that question is asked, what's the number? What's the hidden secret? What do you need to work on to get better? What blah 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 blah. They say two things. They say, drill the basics and work on your feet. That's one of the things that is said the most often is feet. So you tell me, is it important? I think so. I want to thank our two guests, Dalos and Coat. Thank you so much for joining us, especially because it's kind of quick notice. Really appreciate you guys joining us. I am heartbroken that I'm not going to see you at SKVC next week because this is news to me. But I'll see you again soon, my friend.
All right.
Peace out, y'all. What's next? Our next show in 2 weeks. Do you know what's next? I do.
I don't.
We're going to be talking about Armageddon. We have Technopop joining us.
I didn't actually know that.
And we have Crow joining us. We're going to be talking about Armageddon. We're going to be talking about the different games that are going to be run at Armageddon, how heralding is going to be working. I don't exactly know the full extent of what we're going to be talking about besides those things, but it's going to be a Geddon episode. So join us next week, or in 2 weeks. Sorry, join us in 2 weeks, which just happens to be right before Armageddon, so we can talk about Geddon.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise, thank you for watching The Bench, as brought to you by Forged Foam. In fact, because my girlfriend is awesome, I now have the shield conveniently right outside my office.
So good.
Check this out. This is a real shield that Forged Foam made for us, and Horus is getting one of these pretty soon too. So this is beautiful, and like, I don't know if you could see like the detail on this thing. Like, it's gorgeous, and it's an amazing shield. I fought with it hesitantly because I'm like, I don't want to wreck this, but this is just
wreck it.
no. This is absolutely a beautiful shield that Forged Foam makes, or made for us. So I didn't ask him this. I didn't ask how much it would be to the general populace. I don't even know if he's willing to make a bench shield, but maybe you could ask Forge Foam, see if they'll make a bench shield for you, or whatever your heraldry might be, whatever you'd like. But thank you for joining us.
They do it on a CNC machine, so it's probably pretty doable.
We're gonna play some Helldivers. So check y'all later. Don't hide. Be yourself. We'll see you in 2 weeks.